Truth is constant. It's not changing because God's not changing. Furthermore, Scripture, which is our means of accessing the truth, that's all set. And as is, it's all sufficient. So, what's the point in further study of theology or writing a theology book? Consider what happens in Acts chapter 10. Now, before Acts chapter 10, all of Christianity was confined to a single cultural context, namely Judaism. In Acts chapter 10, Gentiles become believers. Now, Acts chapter 11 records all these new questions that the church, when they got together and had a council in Jerusalem, all these new questions they're asking. Do these believers need to be circumcised? What does Christianity look like for them? Because it's going to look different than it does for us. Truth didn't change. Scripture was still all sufficient to answer those questions. But because there were new questions, theology and doctrine had to be developed to answer them. Now, what happened in Acts chapter 10 and Acts chapter 11 is not the last time Christianity has entered into a new culture, and is not the last time that new questions that hadn't been asked before were asked. That continues to happen today. So historical theology, then, is studying how Christian doctrine has been developed, how it's been understood, and how it's been applied from the beginning of Christianity up until now. And there's two unique ways, or unique things, that historical theology brings to the table as we're studying. First, historical theology allows us to understand that our theology today is inherited. When we consider the Trinity, or when we consider or say Scripture is all our authority, ultimately we are inheriting that, and the depth of that from the early church fathers and the theologians in the Reformation. Furthermore, historical theology informs our theology for today. Now, we may have new questions that arise and new cultural contexts of, okay, how do we apply Christianity here? We can be informed of, well, here's how they did it in the 1500s when they were faced with this issue. Now we can be informed of, if this is faithful application of Scripture, what did they see in Scripture and how did they apply it? We can know that for what we do today. Ways that historical theology have been applied in my life, it's most clearly through conversations with friends, especially it's very common today, this thing called deconstructing faith. Many believers today are deconstructing or falling away from the faith that they grew up with. A lot of it is because they're asking questions and then not getting a satisfying answer. So for one friend in particular, he struggles with the reliability of the Bible. Didn't it change? And then there's these Gnostic Gospels. Why weren't they included? And then historical theology has significant benefit of, well, it is a good question. Why do we consider the New Testament, and why do we just consider those books? And we can read someone like in the late 2nd century, like Irenaeus, who says in his book on the apostolic preaching, this New Testament stuff, this apostolic preaching, is consistent with the Old Testament. Furthermore, the Old Testament said it was coming through the prophecies. Therefore, this New Testament, this is something that we can affirm and hold on to. And then a friend asked, well, didn't the idea that Jesus is God, didn't that come hundreds of years later? Did Jesus really claim to be God? It seems like he says he's the Son of Man, right? And again, fair question. And we benefit significantly from the early church councils because they were asking those questions. Is Jesus God? Is Jesus man? What does that mean? Is he part one, part the other? And the list goes on. As Christians address us with questions today, many of them have already been answered. And then any new questions that we get, we can look back, well, how was a similar question answered in the past? Or a new scenario, how was that applied in the past? Thank you.